One of the main things that we will still would do is, besides the permanent programming that we will put together, is using the space as a community incubator, meaning that there's always going to be space for people to use by the hour, by the week, by the day, month, etc., etc. We never owned the building. We used to rent it from the city. The reason they took it away is because mainly we are more progressive, leaders in the community in general, and we always been historically since the 60s when we started. And the reason the building is still empty is because the landlord of the building now make an agreement that the facility will always be a community facility. And that was the only reason they sold the building to him. So whenever we hear that he changed his mind and he wants to build something else, we stop him. He made an agreement and he has to keep that agreement. And that's one of the reasons he haven't been able to turn it into a dormitory or a youth hostel, which we always felt that's what he wanted to do. But one of the things that we realize that it's important to do community organizing, it's important to use a lot of the cultural identity of the community. So through theater and art, we managed to recruit a lot of people. And that was one of the basic things. Through charras, we got a lot of musicians, and we got a lot of actors, and we succeeded doing a lot of plays that related to the community.
Lower East Side is taking my life away.
The goal is to try to keep the building being a community facility forever, for as long as the community exists. And then you see places like Clemente Soto Perez, and you see places like the Girls Club and other facilities that have developed, throughout all those years. And those are important places. And I think that's how you measure the success. When you walk to this community, you see public events, you still see a lot of Latinos, blacks enjoying the activities, and all the new residents that have moved in since gentrification, enjoying the activity together. And that's important, because that's how I know that all the stuff that we did since the 60s as a group and or as a community in general was successful. My story is the history basically of the neighborhood in some ways, is because I was part of it, and I did my part as a resident of the neighborhood to help save it as much as we can.
What's happening is housing is one of the biggest problems down here, very bad housing. But that also adds up to a very big percentage of unemployment. And what we are trying to do now is put a lot of concentration of a comprehensive development of the neighborhood.
We must create a new society by getting rid of the gouging slumlords, the rats and roaches, and the property pimps who are getting fat off of our sweat and blood.
These puppets are like exteriorizations of internal things. A lot of times, the puppets have secret stories. They show us things. We start out thinking we know what they are, and then they reveal more things to us, hidden stories.
You feel completely free to create a creature, something that doesn't exist, so you expand your ideas a lot.
The treasures, that's what I love about it, are always surprises. It has this energy of its own.
The puppets usually is an extension of deeper emotions that are kind of oppressed in you. People seem to connect with that as sort of a spiritual connection to it.
When he says action, then
He said action.
No, that's action. You see, I told you, man.
So calm down.
You're gonna make me. The Puerto Ricans gonna come out.
Garvaya is a very special art space for individuals to create. The principal motivation of it, it's trash made into art. It really drives you to a very creative place, challenging yourself to transform something that already exists while you're recycling, and there's also that intention.
We gather cardboard, broken things, go down to the river and get driftwood, and we walk around whatever city we're in this case Manhattan, and we just gather this improbable collection of things. We start out with most eyes would be a trash heap, and it ends with objects of extraordinary beauty. And then our job is to make them come alive and tell a story with them.
When they told us about recycling garbage, we think in our head that like garbage from the street. Oh, we never thought you could make masks out of
Never
that.
thought about making masks with CDs,
Yeah.
detergent.
Plastic containers, yeah.
Detergent. I mean, who does that? Who thinks about stuff like that? You know. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool.
And I'm gonna hold it. You're gonna go very slow.
Hello?
Slow. Slower, slower.
One of the things that's most extraordinary to me is the whole cycle or the whole process. We start out brainstorming, and it's open to anyone.
From the beginning, it had a very specific spirit, and I love how that became the essence of the project, and it's maintained because of the people that it was made for and how we got inspired.
We don't really have preconceived ideas. It's a magnet to people that come. Some people are professional artists, some people have no experience whatsoever, multi-generational, children, elders, and we cobble that all together and find deeper themes. It never ceases to amaze me where people take it.
You're almost giving hope to the people by bringing out this creativity show to them.
This community, there's a lot of Latinos and all different kind of nationalities living here. And to see how much progress has happened during the years in terms of change in the community and people that are willing to listen, I think that it's important for us as artists and also for the community to come together to save the gardens and everything that's going on here I'm not from Loisaida, but Loisaida is part of me now.
What makes this program really special is open-endedness. It's like a spirit that a lot of people in the neighborhood have come to know. We open our doors to this process, this open-ended process of creativeness. These lead artists, they're connecting people, they're connecting with peer organizations, with the people that make this neighborhood, with the social infrastructure, which is basically the things that you don't see, but the neighborhood wouldn't work without them.
We at Loisaida, we have something that we call Cultural Sanctuary, a place for immigrant communities, for our community in general to feel like they can create in a safe environment and a place that's affirmative of their identity. And that's a central part of our mission, to highlight the positive contributions of Latinos and Puerto Ricans in the United States and in the city and in the community.
Puppetry is a really ancient art form. To keep it alive in the middle of this big city and in these times of technology, low-tech, high magic has a certain power.
To push your ideas to another level, there's no reference to it, and inspire each other to that. That's happening all the time.
I think the important thing about Garbage and all the other projects that we have done in the Loisaida, that is planting a seed in each person. And as we plant a seed in each person, especially the children, they pass on the information to other people.
It has a life of its own now and a real strong interest in the community.
Art at the end is expressing yourself, so it's not about like a perfect technique, or we're there to help and facilitate those skills, but at the end it's really what they want to express, and at the end it's a feeling.
Everything we do here, I feel that is from the soul, because we start something from nothing and give it life, and everybody takes a piece of this life, takes it home. It's something. It's a lot.
Garbajanos will be the savior of the earth as a clean planet again.
A todo el mundo en la vida le ha dado hambre. No importa de qué camino de vida venga, si eres un profesional, un adicto o si eres una persona con mucha influencia política, pero todos han parado aquí a conocer cuál es el sazón de este negocio. Los negocios puertorriqueños, tanto ahora como en aquel entonces, eran escasos. Cuando Adela tuvo la oportunidad de abrir un negocio en el Lower East Side de Manhattan, ella le ofreció al pueblo puertorriqueño los productos que eran comunes en aquel entonces. El impacto que tuvo en el vecindario sí le dio a los puertorriqueños de esta área, un sitio donde poder venir y congregar y comer un poco. Adela tuvo un impacto con muchas de las personas que vinieron al barrio sin ingresos, y eso lo hizo que ella fue una persona que compartía. De lo poquito que ella hacía, siempre había un plato de arroz habichuela para quien lo necesitara. Adela sí tuvo una gran cantidad de gente que le compartió comida por menos dinero y hasta gratis. Pero nadie salía por esas puertas sin tener la oportunidad de comer algo de este sitio. Siendo uno de los fundadores participantes de que comenzó el programa de los Loisaida Festival, creo que el vecindario trae en sí a la comunidad que vive en esta área un sitio donde todos salen y comenzar a compartir sus música. Algunos traen sus platos favoritos y los comienzan a compartir con otras personas. Y ese día que el Loisaida Festival se lleva, es el día donde más puertorriqueños que han salido del área han vuelto para participar de ese evento. Básicamente el festival tiene un impacto en muchas de las personas que han pasado por este barrio. Y los trae porque se encuentran y te encuentras con gente que algunos se han mudado para Florida, otros se han mudado para Puerto Rico, pero cuando llega ese festival, pues todo el mundo regresa por ese día para participar con gente que conocían anteriormente o quizás encontrarse con gente que hace años que no ven. Si tú tienes un propósito que significa algo para otro, continúa. Y creo que debes de todo el tiempo que tengas la oportunidad de enseñar que tú eres de nacionalidad puertorriqueña, borinqueño. No te olvides que todos tenemos que aportar algo para el beneficio y el triunfo de este país. Somos gente buena y vamos a enseñarlo con nuestra gente, haciendo lo mejor de cada uno. Porque así es la única forma que podemos enseñar que el puertorriqueño hace una diferencia. Que Dios los bendiga.
If you were to catalog all your photos, how many photos do you think you have printed at this moment of the Lower East Side?
Already printed, at least in different shape and forms and sizes, at least already a couple of thousand.
And so
how many negatives? And negatives uncountable.
That's what I was going to say.
Uncountable. I've been here since 1976 in the neighborhood. Discovered and started photographing here before I became involved in 1976. My first photographs are from that year. And it was like, coming home to Berlin. I was devastated, bombed out, shelled out, emptied out. But on the other hand, there was so much energy in the streets and people, and my father came to visit and said, "Why don't you just all paint it white?" I said, "Well, we're putting pictures on the wall, murals. Look at the murals, they're full of color and life. It's history, dreams, and all of that stuff." And the energy was so great that even as a single mom and freelance photographer, coming from Fifth Avenue, I kind of made a life.
Cultures put together in one thought, a clash. The result of that clash put together in one thought, Spanglish. Lower East Side, Loisaida. Loisaida came into my mind. It was in the back of a van, you know? And I said, Chino, I found the name. And I came back to the Lower East Side. And there was the whole parallel between Don Quixote of the 15th century and Chino and I, because we think that we're in love with this community that nobody wants. So there. How could there be decay and there could be growth in the same place? It's because creativity is taking place here.
Santos. I come to have your picture took. For me, it's the only livable neighborhood in the city. If we hadn't done what we did with the gardening, the crowd wouldn't be here. Gardening and the beautification in any other way, and the culture and the festivals and the music and the food. The energy is really still there. You just have to look a little harder and have to have known it, and now it's kind of like safe for everybody. It was one of the 36 exposures from my first roll of black and white film. And I got 2 or 3 really great shots out of it. And that was it, and then I was hooked.
The Lower East Sider is sometimes known as the ghetto supermarket, where street hustling is a way of survival, a way of life. But there is also another way of life that deals constructively with the new pioneers of tomorrow. For it is from them that redressing of the neighborhood will spring.
Well, the stories of course are endless, but it is our life. That's so unbelievably intense at all times. Well, the end of the day has not come yet. Looking back, however, onto all the moments in time captured in photography, I say it's incomplete, yet it tells a story organically. These photographs no longer are mine. They weren't from the beginning. It was always the community who created them for me, because they were there. The people, the environment, the gardens, the roofs, the streets, everything was there. All I had to do is point my camera and shoot for many, many years. And so as a tribute to the community, they will be archived, they will be remembered. The photos will speak for themselves. They are telling the story of the Loisaida, 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 Loisaida. Viva Loisaida.
Hello, my name is Melvin Alves. I am a documentary filmmaker, photographer. I have lived in the I have worked in New York City for the past 4 years. I came from Puerto Rico in 2016, and definitely it's been just like everybody else. It's been a challenge. It's been a journey in one way or another. But I gotta say, if I'm talking about my work and how it kind of moved along, these 3 pieces that we're about to see. I think something that propelled these pieces to be done is, I think we all have a sense of wanting to connect with who we are. We have a sense of connecting with our ancestors, with our history, with our, doesn't matter where we come from, we carry our history with us. And Puerto Rico is my history. It's my home. It's where I grew up. I just moved there for 2016, and I wanted to. I got here and something just kind of clicked, where it's ironically you want to find your people, you want to find your sense of community, if you will. And for that first year that I was in New York, I obviously had the jobs here and there, and I still do a lot of jobs in every way, shape, and form. But 2017, something happened, as we all know. Hurricane Maria hit, and a lot of people around me, a lot of people from Puerto Rico, obviously it broke all our hearts. We felt that there was not much we can do, but we got to work. And in my sense, I did the same, but through my medium. And I started calling organizations from around New York City and telling them straight up, listen, I am a filmmaker, I'm a photographer, I am donating my services to anything that has to do regarding Hurricane Maria relief. And from there, obviously, I reached out to Latea, I reached out to Clemente, to the Loisaida Center. And from there, it was just like a Pandora's box of treasures, really. It's funny because it just kind of went from there. And I really didn't know much. Coming from Puerto Rico, I didn't know much about the Lower East Side and the deep history it still has with Puerto Rico, and the history that it has gone through to be able to help us, help the community to stay either A, intact, B, to retain as much as the culture, because as Michelangelo actually said earlier, yeah, I mean, Lower East Side back in the 60s and 70s, it was like, I'm going to use what one of the people I interviewed for these 3 pieces that you're going to see, it was like walking into Berlin during World War II. It was just like, it was horrible at the end of World War II. It was horrible. It was ruins, and that's what it looked like. And considering that you're in New York and then you go to that neighborhood, when I started doing these things with Hurricane Maria, I started kind of joining into different organizations. And the Loisaida Center, I have to say that they took me in. And for the past 3 years, I documented and I looked for anything that was in search of, anything that had to do with our history, the history of Puerto Ricans in that neighborhood, or any minorities in that neighborhood that had something to say that actually helped preserve its way of life. I was interested. And from there, I just kept doing more work with them. And I was very blessed that in 2019, I received an artistic residence for a 6-month artistic residency in the Loisaida Center. And from there, I decided to, with the help of Libertad Guerra, and Alejandro Epifanio, we sat down and we're like, okay, let's talk about 2-3 people that we think should be spotlighted, if you will. And we decided to go with the story of Marlise Momber, a photographer that has been living in the Lower East Side for more than 40 years. We talked about Chino Garcia, which is a community leader and activist in the Lower East Side. And we talked about Luis Rivera, the son of Adela Fargas. And and those 3 really, it created something so beautiful. It created this it was almost a time capsule, if you will, but that time capsule kind of makes us all think about where we are today in relation to what these people have done and are still doing. And that's what I found interesting. That's what I found beautiful about all 3. And all 3 took me in, and all 3 accepted me. And because they see this, let's be honest, most people, when they see me and I tell them I'm Puerto Rican, I see this guy, I have this sense of, people have this perception of, like, they see this kind of pale skinned white guy, like, who the hell is this guy? But then I start talking Spanish. They're like, yeah, this is just one of the one of the ones from the tribe. Don't worry. Like, it's just a sense of I feel like I have to win their trust, and I love that moment. I love that moment with a new subject or with a new friend in that regard, because it really, something beautiful tends to happen. And that trust is really shown in all three documentaries. They trust me. They understand that where I'm coming from, what I'm trying to do is solely for the purpose of documenting their life and keeping it as objective as possible, because they have something to say, and they've been doing what they've been doing for the past 30 to 40 years, and no one is going to stop them. And if anybody knows, like, for example, Chino Garcia, I love him to death. He is an amazing human being. I've learned so much from him. I call him now one of my mentors, because that man has taught me so much about the community and what it really means to have a community and fight for it and preserve it, no matter what the cost. And his story with the fighting in terms of Charas and the building PS 64 is a perfect example. And I feel more so and ironic that PS 64, also known as Charas, is almost a mirror image of the Clemente Soto Vélez in terms of the way they look, and more so in terms of what they're supposed to be intended for. Both buildings are in the sense of a Clemente is a cultural space where artists from all walks of life come together and create. And that is exactly what Charas is intended and supposed to be. And the fight that they have had with the landlord for the past 30 years has been intense. And unfortunately, that building is one of the ones that is abandoned. But people like Chino Garcia and people like Bimbo, God rest his soul, but people like Bimbo Rivas fought their life to preserve that way of life, because art is in essence the binoculars that we see life through. So it was really important to his fight has been so important in that regard. And that's something that I'm proud that I was able to document, and still to this day doing, because like everyone knows, everything is still, it's a work in progress, and it's a beautiful work in progress. It's a chaotic work in progress. It's a little bit of everything, but I think that's the point of art. It's the point of creating, and don't stop creating. And no matter what the circumstances, just keep going, just keep doing, just keep creating. And that's what I feel like, that's what I've loved from these three pieces. All three of them in one way or another, whether Marlise Momber and her photography, whether Luis Rivera and the way that his mother's restaurant that now fell on his hands, Casa Adela, and what they've done during the past and how they've helped the community, because Casa Adela is an amazing restaurant. And they have catered to everyone there, and they have given meals out for free when they need to, because a person that lives in that area can't afford it. And they did everything humanly possible to help, again, preserve the way of life in that neighborhood. And I wish that a lot of, I see that, to me, in my perspective, I see that as a beacon for the rest of New York and almost even the world, because these people are fighting to preserve their way of life, their culture. And I love that, because yo soy puertorriqueño de pura cepa, yo nací ahí, yo me crié ahí, pero yo ahora vivo aquí en Nueva York, y lo importante es preservar mis raíces, mi historia. O sea, así que mi historia es la historia de la gente que está viendo en alguna forma u otra. So that's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing, and I love what has come, the byproduct of all the things that I've done in the Lower East Side, and will continue to do so moving forward.
I want to ask you something. You know, recently I've been hearing about, for instance, Black neighborhoods that were in parts of New York that are forgotten. You don't even see them in films like that Scorsese film, The Gangs of New York, that talks about the archaic New York. There's been so many sediments of identity. An immigrant community that is still vulnerable is really confronted, a bit like Rommel was saying before, with the mortality of the community, right? So you're talking about generations before you came into the space and start to explore the remnants, the archaeology of even recent times already pasted over, built over, gentrified over. You're trying to grab the pieces so archaeology of it, see what's going on. And even now, this work that you're doing, my question is, do you ever feel a sense of futility? Do you feel like, are we just doing something just to make a gesture, knowing that the power, the demographic power, even the immigrant community's existence is based on the power of empire on the homelands, you know? Whether we go as far back as Africa or the indigenous communities, or very simply from the mid-50s to now, Latinos of all shapes and colors having to come to the United States to get a better life. They're still talking about building walls to keep them out. You know, you saw the disdain of the current president, the contempt of the current president for the suffering, for instance, in Puerto Rico. I'd like to ask, does it ever feel like, you know, the futile, the power of empire? I mean, New York has become a place that's unaffordable in our lifetime. How do you know, Juanita just did a thumbs up. The Bronx used to be a no-go place, just like the Lower, like no go. And now it's like the new real estate speculative.
Copy.
How do you feel about what the futility of this kind of work? I'm not saying it's futile, but you understand my question.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I had a conversation similar to this with Chino Garcia a couple of months back, and about a year back. And he was telling me about the history of the Lower East Side in the late 1800s, where it was the tobacco, there was a big tobacco scenery industry there. And it was led a lot by Cubans, and how little by little that has moved away, and now it became now it's like the cigar capital really in the United States, and now is it kind of like in Tampa. And he's telling me about all these things, and all I hear, all I want to do, and what I'm trying to do as a filmmaker, as a documentarian, is I just want to tell these stories, because I feel that the more I learn, it's funny because when I went to the Lower East Side, and I keep going to the Lower East Side, and I keep hearing more stories, and I keep learning, I just eat this all up, and all I want to do is return it back to, in one way or another, and using my vocation to just tell these stories. And I feel moving forward, I mean, yes, definitely the Lower East Side, just like a lot of places in New York that I like how you use the gangs of New York. Obviously, it's unaffordable now. I mean, the only way you can kind of stay there is if you've had some sort of rent stabilization or rent freeze of some kind. And new people moving in, I mean, these apartments are going for one bedroom or even a studio for like $3,000 a month. It's ridiculous. Like, people are being pushed out of New York City. And even now with the pandemic, it's just becoming worse and worse every day. I hear stories of all my artist friends, little by little, whether they're from Puerto Rico or any other place, or even here in the United States or anywhere else, they keep moving away because just no way to sustainably financially live here. It breaks my heart. And the only thing I guess I can do is, again, there is a story to be told in that regard, and I like telling those type of stories. And the only thing I can do, without getting too political or anything, is to tell these stories and continue to shoot and continue to showcase or spotlight people in the community doing something about it. And I see it every day, and I just want to tell those stories. That's how, in essence, that is my voice. My voice is through my art. Just like a painter has his way, or his or her way, that's the same thing for me. And I'm trying to tell those stories. And I hope they make an impact. I mean, more important to me, what's important is to do. And to do is the hardest thing as an artist, because we talk a lot, but then until we finally do something, that's when things really become real. And that's what I'm trying to do more than anything else. Create.
Please.
No, it's fine. Continue.
No, you create.
Oh, okay. What I want to do is, I believe in action, and I believe in creating, and I believe the best way to use my voice is to tell these stories, highlight these people that it's these three individuals that I'll be showcasing their work soon enough. Latea will. I think that to me is the best way to tell these stories and let people understand what is going on and what can be done about it. Because I'm not the most articulate person. I'm not gonna stand in front of a crowd and start giving a speech. I'm not a good orator in that regard. But this is how I say what I need to say.
What I'm hearing you saying is the whole point is keeping the stories alive.
No, definitely. I think that's all I was really trying to say. I'm trying to keep the stories alive. I'm trying to keep the whatever the voice really saying what needs to be said, because they don't have a platform. I'm giving them one way or another, even if it's a small platform, because it's just me and telling these stories with documentary or photography or anything like that. It's a platform, and I'm just a vessel trying to tell these stories. Just like you just said, keeping those stories alive is the best way to say what needs to be said.
Wonderful. Thank you, Melvin, for sharing that. And we're looking forward to going deeper into it and to participate in that life.
Definitely.
And before the end, I would like to send a shout out to Luis and Chino. I hope Luis and Chino are seeing this, and Marlis, of course. This obviously is dedicated to you all. So thank you.
And one last thing, I actually want to thank the Latea. I want to thank them for giving me and all these amazing artists a platform to really to tell these stories one way or another, whatever story it may be. Especially in these times, they're so difficult, but the best thing that these times have is for reflection, and that reflection for us turns into art. So thank you again.
Gracias, Melvin.
Bad country, that bad. Bad country, that bad.
First of all, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Romel Jean-Pierre, and I'm a video artist from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And my work that you have been watching is Plaisir Guédé, and basically it's a little experimental film that I made specially actually for the celebration of the month of November, because in my country, Haiti, the month of November, especially the Guédé celebration, have a very important meaning. Like, for people who don't know, like, Guédé is basically the spirit of the death. And even though you know it's the spirit and the law of the death, but in fact, the celebration itself is a celebration of life. And something also that I've come to realize sometimes, it's like Haiti, my country, I have to say, I believe it's one of the places where there have been more deaf people than people alive in any given time of history. Because even during slavery time, like, and the death rate of the enslaved people were brought from Africa to the land, they were dying at such a rate that, like, you know, like, they could not create enough of us to replace who will lose. And also, it's a land I've seen so many massacres, so many disasters, so many abuse and everything. And with the celebration of the Guédé, it's some way, it's in a sense to allow those deceased people, those who passed away, to come back in the real world and being able to celebrate the fact that somehow in 1804 they get their freedom, and also somehow, like, we are still here and we don't forget them. And I did that work about 5 years ago. Actually, Maxence Denis, one of the curator staff, introduced me to video art, and he was a great mentor for me. And I was really influenced by his work, and also by how he could combine music and video to tell a message. Then I took it upon myself to be able to share that message of joy, even in death, via Plaisir Guédé. So that's pretty much what was my work. And really, like, I want the people who watch it to feel that it's not only about death or someone dancing because they finally come to the world of the living. It's really about, like, celebrating what is left after you're gone, because your memory and whatever you left behind, that's what keeps you alive no matter what. So pretty much that was my work. So if you have any other question, either Michel-Ange, Maxence, or Miguel, please don't hesitate to ask.
I have one question, Romel.
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation. It's very powerful, even hearing how articulate you are about your vision about the country. I've never heard what you just said. It's something we know, we've read in history, we've never heard it stated. in a context, artistic, you know, an artistic context is a special context. So it's almost a, if I dare say, a sacred phrase that you just said, that there more people have died there than have been alive at any given. This is a very powerful statement. So that means that the country is inhabited by a dialogue with death, but we are alive. And so I'd like to ask you, how do you think, because often people outside of Haiti can be fascinated, those ask for reasons more or less mature, can be fascinated with some aspects of Haitian culture, okay? That's granted for people on the outside. How do you feel your work, this work, will be perceived in Haiti?
So it's fascinating, like to put it in context, thanks for asking this. I've presented that work, for example, in New York, and I've presented in a very conservative American city in Grand Rapids, Michigan, right in the Midwest. The way it was perceived was people were questioning themselves, like, why would you do such thing? Why it's look like almost scary? Why someone have to carry a school and walk on the street with it? Is not something evil and devilish about it. And whenever they ask me that question, also think about one time I presented that work at the Bureau National of Ethnologie, like it's the ethnology office in Haiti. And I remember people saw it as what it was, as a celebration. Because if you're in Haiti, let's say from November 1st until November 2nd, it's not only a moment where you go to a cemetery to bring coffee or bring offering to your ancestor or the death. It's also a moment of great celebration where people keep laughing about it all the time, where you will, whenever you see someone dressed like that with the black and the blue, with powder in their face and being possessed by the Gede, it brought joys, it brought certain type of celebration. So for Haitian, they don't see the more bad aspect of it. For us, we see the celebration of it, because in some way we have that constant dialogue between what it's meant to be alive, what it's meant to be happy, what it's meant to celebrate, that sometimes for me it's like it's a very thin line between the two worlds sometimes. And like going back to Michigan, I told them it's a celebration, but for them it was more like a funeral, like more like, not even with the music that was a little bit intrinsic, could bring trends and things. For them it was always like, oh, that's so sad.
I think not enough of them have died.
No, but not only not enough of them have died, it's like there was even more of us who died on their land, even after civil war and everything, but there were way more of us who died on their land. So therefore, seeing like people who look like me having that celebration of even dying at their hands make them feel weird. So
what you're saying,
like,
it's not just a question of number of people dying, it's also a question of a historical position.
I could go way more about this work than I should, given the context. And also, like, I realized the way they see my work and the way they see, for example, Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, where people also celebrate their ancestors, celebrate life. But it has become such a marketing, such a touristy thing, and such a thing that is invaded by branding that they appropriated as partying and as putting costume. I would even go back to like the way they used to do it in Irish culture, which is the moment that the veil will fall and like where you can travel between the world. But now it's become Halloween, partying, where young people dress up and you are no judged about anything, you know. But well, in Haiti, in that work, I wanted to capture the essence of it. If you see in it only me and the other actor are dressed up and everyone else is doing their daily life. So death walk around human all the time, and we might not have the eyes to see it, but in Haiti, if we have the third eyes, or if we have another level of seeing, you would feel that you're crowded, and there would be one living for every 20 dead people. So pretty much my work, it's basically in between the celebration of life and also the revival of death.
Thank you, Romel.
Thank you very much.